Hey everyone, welcome to our Rock Your Purpose book club call. This is the last 3 chapters of Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm Eilers-Heffner, Sapphire Ambassador, and thank you for getting on and thank you for being patient with me. Melissa is ill, so she is unable to join. So we'll be sending up some prayers for her. Anyway, this book has been phenomenal. I'm loving it. I've loved every chapter of it. I have it on Audible. I have it in print. And so I am definitely excited to re-listen to it as a rotation because it listens so well and so many great tips and habits. And the other thing that I found reading this whole book is that there are habits that I have formed that I didn't realize were so positive, but that I have been able to track habits. Or can you hear me? I'm just frozen. All right, I'm going to keep talking or we'll be here all night trying to fix stuff. So it's just really encouraging that there have been systems that I've put in place. I'm sure all of you have noticed things that you've put in place for your life. So it's really encouraging to hear an expert say, hey, these are good things to be doing. So anyway, chapter 18, he really talks about it's easier to stick with habits that are already our natural inclination, that kind of line up with our natural giftings. And I say this all the time, like we need to be working in our gifts. We need to be working in our strengths, right? There's the Strength Finders book. There's other recommendations by John Maxwell where he talks about working in your strengths. And the falsehood is a lot of people think, well, I'm not as good in a certain area, so I'm going to spend time there trying to get better. When the reality is that we should be spending time in our strengths and only spending some time on things that we're not as strong in. And that way too, we are delegating and working harder with people. I'm going to do this. Hold on. Tried to remove the pin too. Now you just can't see me. All right. Nope. Trying to see if I can be something other than a frozen face over here. So anyway, working in our strengths, working in those areas and only spending small amounts of time in those weaknesses. And he also just really talks about how our genes can predispose our efforts, but they don't necessarily predetermine. There's also this effort that we have. We can be excited about something. We match that up with our natural skills, and then we can align our ambition with our ability. I don't know why it's doing all this weird stuff. That's the wrong camera.
I can see you moving in that camera though.
True. Maybe if it stays there. Okay, we'll go back to that camera. Let me move me back over here. It doesn't like to flip over to me right now there. Okay. So anyway, just really making our efforts, looking at things that we're excited about, matching those with our natural skills, aligning our ambition with the ability. And I was a little bit disturbed by saying finding a game where the odds are in your favor, because it reminded me of Hunger Games, which is so traumatizing to me. But enjoying what we're doing, finding things that don't feel like work. And we talk about this too with Plexus, that it doesn't feel like we're working all of the time. It doesn't feel like work. I know as a physical therapist, I don't feel like I'm working until I have to do documentation. I love working with the patients. I love digging into medical charts and seeing the history and, putting all this scientific information together. All of that is fun. It's the documentation that really feels like work when I work as a PT. When I worked pediatrics, when I teach pediatrics, none of that feels like work to me. It just feels passionate. And being able to help people with Plexus is just so rewarding and passionate, right? It doesn't really feel like work. And then things when we are losing track of time, we get into the zone, we get into the flow, and where we feel that we're getting stronger returns than the average person, or things that come naturally. So many things in this business like can feel natural to certain people, to certain individuals, but it doesn't mean we're all going to feel a natural in the same task or the same part of this business, right? But I'm sure there are parts of the business that we all feel that we're naturals at. And so that's really, really encouraging. Now, also keeping in mind, he says our genes don't mean that we don't have to work hard. So just because we have a positive genetic disposition to be a good swimmer, for instance, right? It doesn't mean that we don't have to work hard as a swimmer. And this is just so important in all areas of life that we don't want to take things for granted. We can always learn and grow and hone in on our skills and use our genetic predisposition, right? To be a better person, to be better at what it is that we are doing. And it really is things that we're now more naturally inclined that's going to point us into those strength areas of our life. Tells us where we should be working hard. It tells us what is going to be the most fulfilling and not playing the comparison game. So I know for my daughter, hopefully she can't hear me because she'll be so offended, but she played volleyball this past year. It was her first playing volleyball. And in the fall, she had opportunity to run cross country or play volleyball. And she's a natural runner. She's a beautiful runner. And I'm trying to steer her towards that without pushing too hard, and encourage and show and help her remember her running experience too, because that was something that she was more naturally inclined to be good at. And I think she'll be overall more fulfilled in that versus doing something that looks like fun, but is such a different skill set that it may not be the best fit for her, right? And then also just putting in the reps. We have to make sure that whatever it is where we're working, where our strengths are in this business, in life, and our hobbies, that we are really putting in the effort and the work. So that just really is a good reminder of staying consistent with our IPA, which is also getting into these other chapters of this book, but, putting in the reps and being consistent and diligent. So anyway, chapter 19, he talks about the Goldilocks rule and how this is how we can really stay motivated. Now I got to look, you guys, like how many PTs and PTAs and therapists do I have on this call? Because how many times in school and in practice have we said we have to help our patients find the just right challenge. So the just right challenge. And you think about this when, say, we're teaching our kids something new, or we ourselves are learning something new. If we make something so hard and we're just failing, we're not going to learn that skill. We're not going to rise to that occasion very easily unless you're just really that determined, right? And if it's too easy, then it creates boredom, but it's finding this just right challenge. So in therapy, we talk about it. We talk about this with teaching our children. If my kid is bored in math, he's probably going to start playing with his pencil and bugging his neighbor, right? Or whatever, versus if it's so hard that it's like, oh my gosh, I have to work so hard on this one problem and it's taking me 20 minutes to do one math problem. That's probably so hard that they're going to want to shut down. So this just right challenge is really important to keep in mind. And it just really makes a lot of sense. And I think that we all are aware of it, even if we didn't know that that was like the name of it. So I love the story of Steve Martin, how he just started as a 10-year-old performing and realizing that he loved to perform. And he's a great example. I didn't realize that until I read this book. I mean, I've always liked Steve Martin, but I didn't realize that he had been pursuing this career for so many years. And he's a true example of the long game. I know for me, like I've been doing this business going on 6 years very soon, like this spring. And I had no intention of taking 6+ years to get to diamond, right? When I started, but it's okay because we're learning and growing, and I wouldn't change my journey for anything because I've accomplished a lot of other things besides just building a Plexus business during this time too, right? But really playing the long game. And Plexus, the journey of the business of Plexus for some can be a long game. It depends how much time we're putting in. It depends where we're putting, where we started from. It depends on our influence when we started. It just depends on so many things that it can all be learned and we can build on our skills, but the long game. And that's okay. So I was just reading that again. Okay. And then making sure too that once we establish a habit, that then we're still fine tuning it and still advancing that in some areas. So IPA, I remember a couple years ago, I'm like, Taylor, it doesn't take that long to do IPA. And she's like, yes, it does. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like, you can send out like 5 messages in 5 minutes to people. She's like, I can't do that. Well, you maybe not right now, but you will, right? And Rochelle Furman has talked about this, how when she started and she's sending messages and she felt like it took so long to do IPA, and now she can get it done so much quicker, right? Like buzzing right through it. And we're still advancing though in those small areas. Okay, let me read back what I've been writing to people and reflect on that and make sure that I'm improving on what it is that I'm saying. Okay. Asking for feedback. Even I'll even read something to Jackie and be like, Jackie, how does this sound? Because Jackie has a different perspective too on communication and stuff. And so she'll be like, well, I would say this. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good point. Right. And so I'm still asking for feedback to better myself even now. Mastery requires practice, so that the more that we're practicing it, the more routine and kind of boring it can become. So my 9-year-old, I'm like, honey, like, why didn't you want to go get dressed when I asked you to get dressed? He's like, well, it's boring. Well, okay, but you're sitting on the floor playing with a dog toy. You're not 2 years old. Like, that dog toy should be boring too. Like, that's not exciting. Just go get dressed. There's so many things that we do in our daily life that really are very boring, and we still have to do them. And there can be days where our IPA can feel a little bit boring, right? There can be days where it isn't super exciting, and that's okay, because it doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with us. It just means that we're turning that into more of a habit. And making sure too, like, if you're sending out just a copied and paste messages, and your IPA would be super boring. So make sure you're reaching out personally to people, make sure there's a personal touch, make sure you know who you're talking to, that sort of thing. But a lot of people, if they see a little dip in motivation, they think, oh my gosh, this isn't working. I need to change everything. I need a new system. And that is not true. And I've heard it over the years from different jewels and diamonds. Like, I just kept changing my system because nothing was working. Well, the problem is that you have to stay with a system long enough in order to see the fruit of that, right? So don't just, oh gosh, I'm just not motivated to do my IPA today. I have to use a different system. I need a new IPA sheet. I need a new planner. No. that's where discipline can come in, right? But it also, the same token, it is important to get a win too. He talked about the whole dopamine receptors and how people are doing the slots and how that's the biggest jump of dopamine and things like that. So we do, if we're doing IPA consistently and not getting a join for months on end, then you need to reach up to your reach up and say, okay, I've been doing my IPA. I'm not getting responses. Like, what is going on? Like, you're going to want to tweak in those situations and see, because you shouldn't be going endlessly through, you don't want to go through the motions. You do want to be intentional with who you're talking to and what you're saying. But there are times where I'm like, I'm going to get like 12 joins in a month or two because I have been talking to so many people and they're talking back, but just not pulling the trigger. Right. So that that will come to fruition. But if there is a time where you're not getting joins or not getting that win, we need to look at things a little more closely. And then the greatest threat to success, boredom, not failure, boredom. And I can see this homeschooling little kids and teaching basic math and phonics is really not that thrilling, you guys. It's just not. And it can be a little tedious and boring. So staying with the course and seeing the fruition. And it is fun though, because now I see them learning and reading more fluently and Emmeline sounding things out on her own. And it's like, okay, this is good. We're getting somewhere. I see some progress, but definitely it's not failure, it's boredom. So keep that in mind and make sure that you're doing these other habits that we've learned in the book about kind of that reward system. When we do something, do our IPA, and then we get to eat an M&M, whatever it is, maybe not an M&M, but get a sip of your Slim. I don't know. But just the other things that we've talked about through this book. And then chapter 20, talking about how habits create the foundation for mastery. So this also brings me to something I've really been, I've talked about it in my stories before, and I did a post actually today on this, and it had to do with delegating. So delegating to my children and saying, okay, I need you to clean the bathroom. Well, I don't just say, go clean the bathroom. I say, okay, this is what you do. This is how you clean from top to bottom. Okay, you do this, you wash your hands. Like here, I'm showing them, I'm talking them through it. Then I'm doing it with them. Okay, you clean that sink, I'll clean this one, whatever. And then as time goes on and I can continue to delegate, then they're going to be able to master that task. They're going to take that ownership. They're going to learn from their mistakes. Jackson cooked all 4 meals this week, Sunday through Thursday here. So proud of him. And we had a couple learning experiences through that. We all are fed and have nice full bellies, so nothing was destroyed or anything, but there was just some tweaking. And through that, we had a lot of learning. So just making sure that we're setting ourselves up to have mastery is important as well. The less energy that we spend making trivial choices. Now, this stood out to me because I am not one to want to eat the same food every single day. In fact, the 3-week belly blaster, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to eat something different for 1 meal a day besides belly blaster shake, right? Thankfully, we have multiple slim choices now and can add active or not, or add greens or not. So I do feel more variety in that right now. And the busier that I've been in different seasons, the nice thing, and I will appreciate about the belly blaster, is it's 1 meal. I don't have to think about what I'm eating. I don't have to think or plan. I just make my shake. And so there's a lot of beauty in that too. But not spending all this energy on what are we eating? What are we wearing? You know, school uniforms. There is a lot of beauty to school uniforms because you're not thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to wear for school today? Or whatever, scrubs at work. Okay, which scrubs, blue or pink? Like easy decisions, right? And that's just really important. And I think that comes down to some of that automation stuff in our life that we can work on. And as we automate, it leaves our brain open for other things. And then we talked about that, just those habits and that deliberate practice over and over is going to lead to mastery. And then I like how he talks about reflection and integrity. That was so great way. That's such a great way to end the book. When he talks about progress reflection, I think that we do a good job of that. Like in our 3-way chats, like, hey, this is what I said to so-and-so. What do you think? Like we're asking for feedback. What went well? What didn't go well? And what did I learn? And what can I do differently? And this is the thing, like, thank the Lord, we're helping people with products and great opportunity here, but we're not going to harm someone, you know, like we're not practicing that first incisional cut over and over on someone. Like this is something that we can learn, and people are still going to be okay, even if we say something kind of weird. it's an opportunity to learn and grow. And we're not going to say the wrong thing to the right person. So just keep that in mind too. And this reminds me of how we've said over the last few months, keeping track of where we are in the month, like keeping track of our points so that next year we can look back at February and compare February of 2023 to February of 2022 and see that growth right there in front of us. And he talked about this with, the basketball team learning and reflecting and focusing in on those skills and moving forward. And then integrity. So obviously this is important to me. I love that. Core values. How am I living? What am I doing to work and show that integrity? And then how can I set a higher standard? And I think that goes right hand in hand with our businesses, because that's what we're doing. We are trying to have a lot high integrity and help people and help them move out of their comfort zones, help them overcome so many obstacles. And it just is such a blessing. And it really is a blessing for blessing situation when we're helping people with that. But I love this reflection back too. I found that a great way to end the book. So anyway, that is kind of my hopefully sort of brief synopsis, and I would love to hear your thoughts too. Apparently we want you to talk, Nicole, because it keeps going back to you.
Okay. That's so funny. So one of my favorite parts was the graph on 241 that talks about mastering one habit. And it's like this really broad, long thing. And then mastering a field. And it totally brought me back to, and I know we've said this 8,000 times with this book, but the slight edge process, right? So for me, it comes to people saying there is no way I could drink half my weight in ounces of water every day. And when I'm like, listen, if I can drink 160 ounces of water for over a month after literally drinking 4 lattes a day and no water, I think you can do it, but let's take the baby step. Just add 4 more ounces for the next 4 days. And then we'll maybe add 4 after that. Because what I don't want them is to feel defeated and running to the bathroom and upset tummy from putting that much hydration in themselves so quickly. But it's the same thing when I introduce exercise to my body, which is really battling me on that. My cortisol levels just really don't like it. And my autoimmune body has fought me with everything. But what I've learned is that if I can walk for 10 minutes for a week or so at a time till I'm not tired doing that, then I can walk 12 minutes. And I've gotten to a point where I'm almost up to 20 minutes without the next day feeling like I've been hit by a Mack truck. And the same thing in my business, getting really, really intentional with less copy and pasting and super intentional with really personalized. Let me look at this person's last couple of months on Facebook. Let me see what they're talking about, what their struggles are. Let me, make sure that I'm asking personal things and not just, can you show up to a plexus, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm definitely not able to send 50 messages in a day, but I can send 5 really intentional ones, and it's getting me way better feedback. And so I just appreciated the graph. It looks like a little cloud to me, like that it's just, this intentional thing of building on the good habit you're doing. So I loved that he ended the book in that respect with practice makes perfectish habits.
Well, and we learned this in PT school too, that as you're learning a new skill, you can even have like a backslide, like for instance, I'm going to take up bowling. Okay. And so you start bowling and you're doing better and better and better. And then like 4 games in a row, you are terrible. And then all of a sudden you have this improvement again, right? So it's very normal when we're learning a new skill. And that's that's a motor planning, a motor skill, but it really does apply to even our habits. Like, how many times have I like gone to the gym at 5 a.m. or gotten up at 5 a.m., 5:45 class, like so many days in a row. And then all of a sudden I am just out of that habit and it's terrible for like 2 weeks. And I'm going to like all these different classes. And then I get back into my routine. It's okay to have these moments of reestablishing our habits and not beating ourselves up when we slide out of a habit or something, right? Like, just get back in. Don't have 2 bad meals in a row. Well, guess what? What happens if you do? Okay, then make your third meal really healthy. Go make a very intentional effort for that next meal. Fine, you screwed up two days in a row. Who cares? It's okay. Get back on and move forward and not beating yourselves up over stuff. And he was talking too about the whole boredom thing. And I'm like, maybe that's why I love what I'm doing at the gym so much right now, because it's never the same. It's never the same. The biggest obstacle is just getting out of bed. Once I'm out of bed, I'm good. It's that, oh my goodness, it's going to be cold out there. What's my knee going to feel like today? And after the gym, then all the hard work of homeschooling and multiple kids, right? So, but the actual working out, even though it's hard every time, it's never been the same. We might repeat exercises, but they're always in a different order and with different exercises. So I feel like unless you're like totally like training for some very specific sport or something right now, like join a HIIT gym because it's super fun. That's my opinion.
I really enjoyed about like working in your strengths and how much more beneficial it is to focus the majority, like 80% of your time working within your strengths and 20% of your time on your weaknesses. Obviously, when we have weaknesses, we need to work on improving them. Years ago, I took a strength finders test, and the lady who was directing the course said that the studies have shown, they took so many kids, and kids that were good at reading, they put in one category, kids that were struggling with reading, they put in a different category. And they worked with them, they focused a lot of time in both categories on improving their reading skills. And the good news is that the children who were struggling, who reading was not a strength of theirs, they improved their reading skills by 75%, which is awesome. The kids that they were working with who were already good at reading and reading was a strength improved 2,000% by working with them. So yes, you can improve your weakness, but the ones that had that as a strength already improve significantly more. So that just reinforces to work within your strength and focus your time in your strength, but don't neglect the weaknesses, but that 80-20 rule, like 80% of your time work within your strength, 20% of the time work within your weakness and improve your weakness. But yeah, that just kind of brought me back to a few years ago.
That is fascinating. And that's really encouraging with just stuff I've seen with my own kids. Like, well, they're not ready for first grade everything, but they're also not, like public school is just here's your mold and this is where you need to be. But also so it's just fascinating you said all that. Anyway, with this business though too, and the way that we work together as teammates, we work with our upline, we work with our downline. And that's where I'm like, hey, Jackie, can you make this make sense? Can you make this pretty and visual for me, please? Like, and there's other things that I can pound out really quickly, right? And so we're able to kind of delegate amongst one another and use each other's strengths and benefit the whole team. And that's been really, really evident the last couple of years. You know, I think because we were all learning a lot all together. And now that our strengths have kind of more settled in, we can like pull into one another. Like, hey, you're really good at this. Can you do this real quick? Like, yes, because this will take me 3 hours. It will take you 5 minutes, you know? So.
I think too, though, even with that, even though working in our strengths is so beneficial, we have to be really cautious that we don't get stuck on that dopamine high of working in our strengths and neglect our weaknesses. So we may have somebody who's like rock star recruiter, loves recruiting, doesn't like follow-up, so doesn't do it, and then starts to fall into the trap of, well, I lost people because I didn't follow, or I lost all these people, I recruited them, but they didn't stay. But it wasn't because people don't stay, it's because you need to work on that weakness with your follow-up and on that. So definitely making sure when you recognize where those weaknesses are, that you follow up with your upline to help you with those things so that we can work on those issues so that you don't feel neglected. So when you do that final part where you're analyzing your skills and your growth and everything, you still have the potential for growth and improvement every month. Even though it might not be the recruiting, it might be on the retention and all those. So you can, balance out those different points, because you're not always going to get 250 joins a month. You're not, you're going to have some different things, but you can go, oh my gosh, my retention was this and my reach outs were this. And it isn't always about your results. A lot of it is about your actions. Oh my goodness, I got much more efficient on my reach outs and my posting, and I did the things and I did them better and I was consistent. So I think that those are important things to look at too.
Anybody else? It's a quiet group tonight. Anyone excited to have their kids read this book? I'm like excited for my kids to get a little bit older. They don't really like me to tell them what to read right now. So, but I'm like, oh my goodness, you need to read this or listen to it, on Audible or something.
I had my book sitting on the kitchen table, and it happened to be at Damon's spot, and he's like, are you trying to give me a hint? I'm like, actually, it's a wonderful book. If you'd like to read it, I'm almost done with it. You can, this is a couple weeks ago. And so, yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
And I'm over here laughing because I think my 17-year-old could have written this book. The organizational, habitual person that she is, those are just some really God-given talents that, yeah, they're not quite mine. They definitely probably come from her father's side, but
she needs to do a Zoom for all of these preteen kids that we have floating around. Because they'll listen to her.
Yeah, she's definitely, yeah, her habits are all pretty amazing. So, I mean, you know, it's good to see that, because I definitely was not where she was at 17. So it's encouraging as a parent.
Have like 10% battery or less, so I'm going to just talk really quick, but I had to laugh too because I am reading this book, and when I went to my parents' house, my dad was actually reading the same book. So I thought that was super cool, but he actually got Facebook this year, so I think he saw my post on it, so he had started reading it, but I saw the book and was like so pumped that he was reading it. And then I have to say, I have it on Audible too, and I listened to it on Audible first, and it's like I have a hard time if I'm multitasking, I'm not good at it. So I didn't really like the concepts didn't really get cemented in when I was listening on Audible, but now that I've read the book, I'm going to go back and do the same thing, Elizabeth, because I feel like it's helped me so much just to have a really consistent morning routine, and then to have my non-negotiables. Like Thursdays are my crazy day because I coach skating on Thursdays, so I don't get home till really late, and I've kind of like Thursday is almost like a weekend day for me where I can't really do anything extra besides for book club. But besides for Thursdays, I've been consistently doing, you know, oh crap, my daughter's crying. So I'm going to talk really quick. My gratitude journal. I think I've told you guys before, like my dream journal, my 4 pages in the Bible. Now it's yoga and my treadmill walking. And I'm really consistent with like going to bed on time and these habits that have been like really challenging for me for years. And now that I'm in a good routine with that, I feel like it's going to then funnel into, okay, I can do all these things. What else can I do? Can I do IPA during this 15-minute break, or during, you know, like you said, all those things that business wise build up in your head, you make it seem a lot harder than it is. And if I can do all those things, then I can certainly find another 30 minutes to do the other things I need to do, if that makes sense. I gotta probably address this crying child, but I'm gonna mute myself.
Thank you for jumping on. I highlighted on page 240, mastery is a process of narrowing your focus to a tiny element of success, repeating it until you have internalized the skill, and then using this new habit as the foundation to advance to the next frontier of your development. And that's exactly what Erin was just like saying, you know, getting this one thing going. And it's that discipline breeds discipline, or productivity breeds productivity. How many times have I talked about this? Like, okay, have a lot on my mind, on my brain. I don't even know where to start. So do something. Go fold the basket of laundry, or go put clothes in the washer and do something. Get the dishes taken care of. And then that, even for me, I got something done. I accomplished something. I got something off of my list, which means it's off of my brain. And then now I can focus in. And as I'm doing those mindless tasks, I'm thinking about, okay, here's what I can do for my IPA. Oh yeah, don't forget to talk to that person, or they come to mind, or whatever. Obviously, I'm really working hard on using my planner and using the Doe app and being like really good at recording what I'm doing, and brain dumping. Like my phone will, at night when I can't calm down, I just write everything down, right, in my phone, on my app, on Notes app or whatever, or in my planner. So anyway, all of those things, but I highlighted that and it was really good. And Erin, like exactly what she said, when I listen to it, it's like, oh yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. But it's when I'm reading it that I'm like, oh yeah, you know, then it's much more solidified. So many great things.
I love that you mentioned brain dumping. I posted on mine yesterday about just that. And I've been doing it for a while in random places. And for me, I can't do it on my phone because my phone is a distraction to me. And so, because a notice will come up while I'm trying to brain dump, and it will derail me. And so I've gone to doing it in just notebooks. And I do it right before bed, or as I'm winding down at night before bed. And then I also spend about 10 minutes after I've read in the morning, because lots of things come to my brain while I'm reading. I mean, our brains just work like that. When they're active, they begin to, shoot off things to us. And so I just keep it there while I'm doing my devotional so I can write it down and move back to reading. but I have been more productive in the last like 4 days than I think I probably have in the last 4 months with all the brain fog I'd been experiencing. And it really just comes to that, like there's so much there, but I couldn't move on, and I didn't feel accomplished because I hadn't been writing things down to check them off. And I realized that that is a thing that is necessary for me. So like printing out the 11 points of, you know, reach outs for new people, and printing out my action stack paperwork, because it feels, one, a sense of accomplishment, and two, gives me something to legitimately, like the Doe app does, to look back at. Did I really talk to 10 people in the last 3 days? You know, so definitely writing things down is super, super helpful for our brains, even if you don't have mass fog happening.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any nuggets? All right, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you for getting on, you guys.